collecting these, so why don't you guys review them, make sure the points are okay, questions. All here? Ryan? Ryan? Bad. Matt? Robert? John? I got one out of two. If I were a baseball player, I'd get $20 million. Dan Moran? Mike Pago? Okay. So each was out of 50. And then it's not marked on any of the papers, but I added 6 points to the total, which should be reflected in the grade on Blackboard. If you have any questions with respect to the grading, i.e. why did you take off points for this, what I need you to do is mark on the top of the exam paper the question number that you're questioning where points were taken off, and after I collect the papers, I'll get back to you. I'll email you and explain why I fairly took off points. I'm just kidding. I will explain to you if I made a mistake, I was going to give you the points back, or why the points were removed. Okay. Now I'll give you a few minutes to look it over. So I am going to collect the papers, so why don't you review them? Anybody want more time? Okay, so let me collect the papers. So for the balance of the semester, we're not going to do any more macro stuff. We're going to learn more things, just working on the worksheet, some additional ideas. The last exam, which is not a comprehensive final, so it's simply the material starting today, going to the last class, which is May 2nd. So the last exam is Tuesday, May 10th, in this room from 10:10 to 12:10. I will provide another chance for people who would like to improve their score on the macro, that before this exam on Tuesday the 10th, you can come to my office. You have to email me saying you want to take the makeup, and you come to my office, but you have to tell me you're showing up. I think the exam would be out of 80 or 85 points, so I do want to give an opportunity for people to get another crack at the macro stuff. Any questions? Okay, so the first thing I want to do is actually, I want to talk about now getting data into Excel. Now, currently, you get data into Excel how? Well, you open up a spreadsheet, you start typing values in. Or somebody like me gives you a spreadsheet, and it has information in it, and then you go and write formulas, or you go write macros, or whatever. But currently your experience has been that you either manually enter data into cells, or someone's giving you a spreadsheet with that information. But let's suppose now that there's some other computer system. You're at a company, and this company has this computer system that's being used to run their business. And that computer system is not at all integrated into Excel. It's written using some programming language, using some database tools like Access, and it produces all sorts of information, and you say, boy, that information's in this computer system. I sure would like to be able to get at it so that I can then take that data and start analyzing it using all that I know within Excel. So how do I get at that data from this other non-Excel system into Excel? So I want to talk about data today, specifically for getting it into Excel, but to give you a more well-rounded idea of how data is stored within the computer. So before going into it directly and how we're getting into Excel, let me go and open up a Word. You don't have to do this. I'm going to open up a Word document. And I'm going to type in the characters, "This is fun," period. So I've typed in this, that's 4 characters, space is space, that's 4 more characters. Remember, the space is a character. And then fun, period. So I've typed in a total of 12 characters. Everybody agree? I feel like a magician here. And now, I'm going to go save this. In a docx folder, in a docx file. And the name of the file is "This is fun." Okay, so as we all remember, or hopefully remember, information that we type in is stored on the hard disk. And how much space do you think should be taken up by this document where I typed in "this is fun"? What's the atomic unit of storage within a computer? When we talk about computer storage, what do we talk about as terms of the measure of computer storage, right? We talk about weight, we talk about pounds or kilos, and we talk about distance, we talk about inches or feet or yards or kilometers. So Kyle said the word bytes. Everybody remember the word bytes? B-Y-T-E-S. Kyle is right. There actually is a level below it called a bit, but let's just talk about the byte level. So when we talk about computer storage, we use the word byte, B-Y-T-E. And what does a byte represent? Okay, what can I represent in a byte? How big is a byte? Well, if you remember back to computer BITM 2701, remember that a byte is able to store one character. So if I have a hard disk that has the capacity of 1,000 bytes, I would be able to store 1,000 characters because each byte is housed within, a character is housed within a byte. So how many bytes would this take? 12 bytes. 1 byte for the T, 1 byte for the H, 1 byte for the I, 1 byte for the S, 1 byte for the blank, 1 byte for, okay, so forth and so on. I said there were 12. And so in fact, when I stored this file away, I should have used 12 bytes worth of storage. Agreed? That's what I typed in there. 4 for this, space is another, is 2 more, space is, that's 4 more, FUN, and the period takes up a byte, so that's 12. So let me now go to that file, to the temp folder, and here is the file, this is fun. I can't, I think I can make this bigger. No. And if I go and click on its properties, on this is fun. Okay, being a musician, I need now an assistant, so Kyle's my assistant. So how many bytes of storage have I actually taken up with this 12-byte Word document? 12.286. Yeah, well, either one of these. It's either it's 12,000. Let's take the 12,288 bytes. And so, right, so it says size. We can use either one of these. I'm not actually sure of the distinction between size on the disk and size. In any case, it's about, let's just not quibble, it's about 12,000 bytes that got saved for my 12-character document. So does that make any sense? The answer is it shouldn't. You say, well, I mean, where do those other 11,988 bytes get wasted? You only had 12 bytes worth of characters that you used to use. Why is all this space being taken up? Well, remember that Word is a word processor. And so when I go and type stuff in Word, what other sorts of stuff does Word have around that is required in order for me to create this document? Clearly, it has to remember these characters that I typed in. What other stuff can I do, Dan? I can go and change the font, right? So it turns out that this font is Calibri 11, but I could have changed this to some other font. And font size, it's got to remember that, right? And I could change its background color to yellow, right? And as I type more stuff in, it's got to remember where it's going to do a new line. So it turns out that in a program like Word, which is a proprietary program, is a program written by Microsoft, they own it, they design it, they figure out how they're going to store stuff away, and then subsequently they're going to figure out once they store it away and somebody wants to read it back in, how to read it back in. It turns out that there's a whole bunch of other crud, fonts, formatting, stuff that I don't even know about, that additionally gets saved away in addition to the text that I typed in. And all that stuff is needed by Word in order to do all the nice things that Word does for that as a word processing program. Now, if I were to do the same experiment in Excel, let's suppose I went and I brought up a spreadsheet and I started typing in 1, 2, 3, 4, how many bytes do you think would be stored there? Well, you might think it might be 3 bytes for 1, 2, 3. But in fact, if you were to go look at the size of that, again, you're going to see this enormous file size because, again, Excel certainly has a requirement of storing away font information, but in addition, they have to save away things about what cell that's in. It doesn't know that it's in cell A1, or if I type something into cell B47, it has to remember not only the value, but it has to remember the location. So in all these programs, like Word and Excel and PowerPoint and any other program you can think about, information is stored away, not only the data that you want, but also this metadata, this other information that talks about other things associated with the data. So armed with this information, if I in fact had a Word file and I had in it data, numbers, and I'd say, boy, shouldn't Excel be able to, I should be able to say, open up this Word file, and Excel should be able to now understand all the data in the Word file and read it in. Well, now you can see that that really is not possible because there's all this other data, information, numbers within that Word file that Excel would have to know about and be able to, and have to ignore, and obviously it doesn't have the smarts to do that. It wasn't built with that intention. Now, most people probably don't have experience with this, but there is a way, there is a tool that exists on your computer that actually allows you to type in characters, numbers, letters, whatever, and in fact, it doesn't do any formatting. It will just store away the text that you type in. They're called text editors, and the default text editor in Windows is something called Notepad. So if you were to click on the Windows symbol and type in Note, you're going to see that what's going to match is that you're going to see this program that comes standardly with Windows called Notepad. How many people have used Notepad before? A couple of people. And Notepad, when you open it up, has this very Spartan screen with just a few menu items. And if I type in, now this is fun, period, into Notepad, and Notepad again does not do any text editing. It just stores away what you type in. And now if I were to save this away, I'm going to call this, I'll put it in the same temp directory. I'll call it This Is Fun also. And note that this will not interfere with my other This Is Fun, because as I hope everybody realizes that the computer industry has adopted conventions for suffixes, where the suffix is an indication of the type of data that's stored within that file. What are some of the suffixes that we've dealt with? Well, when we have a Word document, the suffix that's put on is period docx, docx. Older versions of Word had period doc. So doc and docx, the extension of a doc or a docx on a file, indicates that the information in that file is a Word file. If it were an Excel file, it would be .xlsx, or for older versions of Excel, it would be .xlss. How many people have experience with music files, right? What are some of the standard music extensions? JPEG, or video extensions, MOV or WAV or WMV files. These are simply conventions the computer industry has adopted, that when you see those extensions on there, it says that the data housed in there conforms to that particular method, whether it be a movie file, and in movie files there are particular different ways of encoding that information, or sound. Text files, okay, so here I'm in this thing called Notepad, which is a text processor. And the text file, if I'm saving things away, the convention is if all I have there is data, no formatting, the most bare bones way of saving the information away, Though the convention is that those things are stored away as a .txt file, a .text file. So I'm going to save this away as this is fun.txt. It won't be confused with the other file that I saved away, which is a docx, because it's a different file name because of the extension. And now I've saved away this file. This is fun. Notice that it has the extension .txt. And now when I go and look at this file and look at its properties, what's the size? 12 bytes, which is what we had anticipated when we typed in the Word file, but then we realized that Word puts in all this other overhead stuff for saving things away for formatting. .txt files are just the data. So, okay, so big deal. That was mildly interesting, but I didn't have to get up this morning just to hear that. That weren't coming to class just to hear that. Okay, so one more fact you should know about. I'm thinking, hoping by virtue of the fact that you're in this class that you're sort of interested in technology, and there's some basics in technology that I think everybody should be armed with. One of the ideas is noting that we have these text files that just have pure data. Now, you learned also in 2701, so we learned this notion that the atomic unit of storage in a computer is a byte. And the other thing that you should have learned is that every element of the computer system, whether it be the processor, whether it be memory, whether it be the display, even to a large degree the printer or the screen, those are digital devices. What does digital device mean? A digital device means that the electronics that are driving this thing only work with numbers. I'm here to tell you that if we were somehow to be able to look at that Intel processor that's working in your computer, and when we sell it, we put in a cell, we put in cell A1 the number 1, and we put into cell A2 the number 2, and we put into cell A3 equal A1 plus A2, that ultimately our processor is going to look at the value in cell A1 and see a number 1, or look in the value in cell A2 and see a number 2, and then add them together. And you're okay with that, okay? But I said everything that the processor or the memory or the display or almost 99% of the printer only deals with numbers. And your objection to that statement should be, yeah, but what about this? You just typed in, this is fun. Those aren't numbers. Those are letters. So how the hell is a computer dealing with letters when I just told you everything in the computer system is numbers? So the computer industry, realizing that lots of things are numbers, and obviously the components of the computer are built to deal with numbers, the computer industry said, look, fine, the only way I can build a processor to work as fast as it can is it can only deal in numbers. How am I going to now deal with these idiot human beings who have to deal with characters like the word this and all this other stuff? So what the computer industry did is they said, we are going to make up a code where we're going to have a number, and we're going to say that number represents a capital A. And this other number represents a capital B. And this other number represents a question mark. We're going to have an association between numbers, which the processor and everything else in the computer system is good at, and what people like called letters or characters. And what is that association called? Does anybody remember that? The numbers are stored in binary. The numbers are stored in binary, but the association between numbers and characters has this letters ASCII. ASCII. If you're a computer geek or you're dealing with a computer geek, we actually have to pronounce these things. It's pronounced ASCII. And It's really a very, very simple and elegant idea. If you go into Google and type in ASCII, you're going to get a variety of hits, and you can click on any of them, and it's going to show you an ASCII table. And it might look a little bizarre until I explain it to you. You're going to see, at least in one column, letters called characters, and as you start looking, let's say, midway through it, you're going to see characters that are meaning something to you. There's a bunch of characters like exclamation point and percentage, and if you scan down further, you're going to see digits, and if you scan down further, you're going to see capital letters, and you scan down further, you're going to see lowercase letters. To the left of those, you're going to see a column probably that has DEC or decimal, and what that is, as I said, every character has a numeric equivalent. So, for example, if you find the letter capital A, you're going to see 65 associated with it. And if you find the letter capital B, you're going to see a 66 associated with it. That means in every computer system in the world that has been built, that will be built, every computer, every printer, every screen, every keyboard, anything, regardless of manufacturer, that those systems, if they know that they're dealing with a character, they will know that if they want to display a capital A, they will send to the printer the number 65, because they know that the printer knows that when it gets a 65, it should display a capital letter A. It knows that when it gets a 97, it will display a lowercase a. And what about other languages? Mandarin, what about all those characters? Well, there's actually an extended ASCII set. It's not, they've extended it to be an international set. Obviously, in other languages, in Cyrillic, there are characters that are not within this character set. So there are other numbers above 127 that are used to represent other characters. But it's a fairly simple idea. The computer industry simply said, we're having number associations with characters. And so when I go and I hit a key, when I hit the letter A, the keyboard translates that letter A, assuming it's a lowercase, to a 97, sends it on its way, and the rest of the computer system is dealing with that as a 97. Notice here, remember I made a big deal about the space, notice that decimal 32 is a space. It is, in fact, has an ASCII representation. And notice also, I made a big deal about this, now you'll thank me, you'll notice that the number representation for capital letters is different from lowercase letters. And that's why Excel, in a lot of cases, when we're writing macros, when we're comparing a lowercase to uppercase, says, if I have a cell that has a capital A and another cell that has a lowercase a, if I'm writing in a macro code, it's going to say those aren't equal, because in fact a 97 is not equal to a 65. And, okay, so when we store information away, when I store this away, this is fun, period. What's actually stored on the disk is not the letter T, but in fact, the first thing that's stored away is the number 84, because that's the ASCII representation for a capital T. Okay, so I've increased your vocabulary. We've learned how information is stored away. I'm getting better to warrant that you came in today. Still haven't rung the bell. So let's go back to the original problem of I've got data. Let's suppose I have data that's not in the computer, it's not in an Excel format. Excel has its own special proprietary format, but I'd like to read it in without having to retype it. So there are a number of ways that can be addressed. So let's suppose I have a bunch of data that I've extracted from another system where I use to calculate my grades. And so let me just type this in, name, comma, number, comma, grade. And I'm just typing in a name, a comma, a number, a comma, and then a letter grade. And I'll type 3 of these in. It doesn't make any the numbers here. Let me just So I'm not typing, I'm just displaying this in words so that you can see it. I'm actually typing those values into my Notepad text editor, where it doesn't put any formatting stuff in there. It's just whatever characters I type in is going to be saved away. Now, the computer industry, of which Microsoft has signed on to, has realized that there is this issue that somebody has a program that needs to get data, and the way they store data, that program stores data, is proprietary and is based upon whatever ideas the engineers who wrote those programs decided upon. Wouldn't it be nice if the computer industry could at least agree to a standard of the way data can be stored away, so that everybody would conform to that standard? They wouldn't get rid of the way they save it away, but in addition to being able to save it away in the way they save it away, they would at least allow the input of data in a standardized, very simplistic way. And in fact, the computer industry has come up with that agreement. So every computer company in the world that writes software that is based upon data has in it a way of reading in data that is not a Word file or an Excel file or whatever other system you have, Google Docs. And that system is a very simple system. It simply says, if you have a bunch of data you want me to read in, and we realize that when you type in the data, there's going to be separations between it. There's an obvious usage for this within Excel where we have different cells. So how am I going to allow, when you type things in, to be able to indicate what cell it's going to be able to go into? I can't type in A1, A2, and A3 because that would be meaningless to other programs. So how am I going to organize it to say, well, this is the end of one field or one piece of data and the beginning of the other? And the simple way is you simply put a comma. So, and this is incredible. You guys don't read into this more than it is. It's a very simple but beautiful way of doing things. So the computer industry said, look, if you want to put data in a very standard way that everybody can read in, take the piece of data and terminate it with a comma. So in fact, I have the letters NAME, comma, NUMBER, comma, grade, and nothing that ends the line. And now I have a new row or new record. I have the word Dave, comma, 97, comma, A. And so I separate each piece of data with a comma. And now if I save this file away, I'm going to do a save as. And now I'm going to save this away as, the name of it is going to be grades. Now, if I save it away and I want it to be known as this type of data which has commas separating the field, I put in an actual industry-wide suffix that everybody understands. And that suffix is the suffix CSV, Charlie, Sam, V, or also stands for comma separated values. So a CSV file is a particular type of file that everybody in the computer industry recognizes as being one where the data, I have a bunch of data in there, and each field in the data is separated by a comma. It's remarkably simple. You would probably have come up with this on your own. And when I save it away, crap, I got the wrong. I want to save this away as a CSV file. Hold on. Oh, I'm the wrong damn. Okay, I want to go into here. Sorry. I want to save this away as a CSV file and call it grade. And when, okay, I actually have a grade.csv. You have to be careful here. When you use the text editor, you note here that all the dialog boxes have a type and it defaults to .txt. You actually don't want the txt. You want to take the all files one here and then type as the name of the file grade.csv. So if you're using Notepad, select as the type all files, because if you don't, if you select the extension .txt, you're going to create a file called grade.csv.txt. and you want the end of it, the extension, to be CSV. So I'm saving this as grade CSV. Now I've created this grade CSV file, which is a plain vanilla form of data, but the beauty of it is now, if I go into Excel and I click on Open, and I navigate to where that file was, in temp, and I have to here, you note here on this filter here, I'm going to have to indicate, notice it just shows those files that match the standard Excel files, but I don't want the standard Excel files. I either want all files, or I think they even have CSV files. I'll take all files, that's fine. You'll note here that there's a file, that the file I have here, grade CSV, and if I double click on it, notice that all that information that I typed into the text editor, which was comma separated, now Excel, because it knew it was a CSV file because of the extension, it said, oh, he separated each field by a comma. I'm going to read the data in, and I'm going to ignore the comma and just use the comma as an indication that's the end of the field, and then read the next piece of data in and put it into another cell on that particular row. So what I was able to do was note, I didn't type that into Excel. I had that data typed into Notepad. And by virtue of the fact that I had the data comma separated, when I read it into Excel, Excel was able to parse out each individual piece of information, put it in its own cell, and now I'm happy. You have to, okay, if you have the extension CSV, okay, Excel is going to recognize the CSV and be able to read it in without doing anything else. Pretty cool. Okay, so if you had another system that had data in it and you wanted to get it out, if you somehow could get out of that system, tell it, go generate the data, it's comma separated, which it probably has the capability of doing, you can then create that CSV file and then read it into Excel. Yep. Any questions? So now I have this thing read into my Excel, and I can go to town. I can do what I want. I can format, do whatever I want. So suppose I type in here sum of these grades. I'm going to get that number. And now I'm done, and I want to save this away. So when I go to click Save File and click on Save, you'll notice that because I read it in as a CSV, and at the top you can actually see the letters CSV, Excel is telling me, hey, wait a minute, buddy. You typed in a formula into this, which calculated the total grades. Now, if you're going to save this as a CSV file doesn't know from the sum, because a sum equals sum and whatever is an element of Excel. So if I save this as a CSV file, I'm going to say, fine, thanks for the warning, but I want to save this as a CSV file. Let me close this. And now, so I've just saved it as grade CSV. Now let me go back to Notepad and let me now open up that file again. And when I open up the file, I'm going to copy and put it into Word so you guys in the back can see that. Okay, so when I open that up, and display it, note here it had all the stuff that I expected, the first row, the second row, the third row, the fourth row, and then it has 2 commas, and then it has comma, 262 comma. Let's take a look at the spreadsheet. So take a look. So in my spreadsheet, I had, let me get rid of this now. So everything looks so cool. Row 1 looks the same, row 2 looks the same, row 3 looks the same, row 4 looks the same. What's this 2 commas on row 5? Well, because I'm saving away 3 columns worth of data, when Excel saved away my file as a CSV, it said, oh, I've got this row here, it's got nothing in it, So really what it's saying here is the nothing before the comma is the first field. The nothing between the two commas is the second field. And the nothing after the third field is, the nothing after the second column is the third field. Make sense? And if you look on the sixth row, you see nothing, comma, 262, comma. So that looks the same here now that you have the explanation for nothing. But if I click into cell B6, you'll note here that I have the sum function. Why did now, when this thing gets saved away, why did it save not the sum function, but in fact the value 262? And the reason why is that it can't save away any of this internal Excel stuff, like the formula equals sum. All it can save away are values, in this case 262. You might argue, well, why couldn't have put it instead of the 262 equals sum B2 to B4? It really sort of had two choices. Whenever you have a formula in a cell, you either can store the formula or you can store whatever that formula calculates out to. And in this particular case, Excel says, I'm saving away the value that it calculates out to. I'm not saving away the formula. So I was able to read this stuff into Excel, and I was able to do my calculations here. But when I saved it away, it didn't save away the formula. So what good does that do me? Well, the answer is if you read something in as a CSV, you are not required to save it away as a CSV. So now that I've read this in and I've done some calculation and massaging, now I want to save it away as an Excel file. So now I can simply go and say, fine, I don't want to save this note as a save type. If by default came up with CSV, which is the way I read it in, if I click on the drop down, I can say I want to save it away as an XLSX. And now it's going to change it from a CSV to an XLSX. Now I can save this away. And now if I get out of this and go back into Excel and note now I can type in, I read in grade XLSX, and in that cell where I had the formula, it in fact retained the formula as you would expect. So while you can read this stuff in as a CSV, you are not required to save it away as a CSV. You can change it to any form that you want. So it's sort of the best of both worlds. I get it in, I massage it, and save it away as an Excel file, and now I can go to town. So we're happy. But we could be happier. Okay, so here's my data here. I'll do this in, here's my data that I had in my CSV. And now I say, this is me, Dave, who got a 97. And I say, well, that's not really my name. I'm Dave the Third. There were two before me. So I say, fine, put a comma in and put in 3 capital I's to indicate Dave the Third. I feel royal today. So let me go into my, I just did that in Word. Let me go back here into my notepad and type in 3 capital I's after Dave and put in a comma. Now let me save this away as grade.csv. And now I go back into Excel. Close this. And now I'm going to open grade again, CSV. And well, now I got Dave in cell A2, that's good, but now I've got these 3 capital I's in cell B2, and it moved off the screen into the wrong columns, my numeric grade and my alpha grade. What the hell happened? All I did is added comma and then 3 I's to Dave. Why did it go and screw it up? Why didn't it, which is what I wanted it to do in this cell here, put in my real name as Dave the Third, and then have 97 in cell B2 and an A in C3? Why did it do that?
You need a spot for it up top to match it to the cell.
Well, it doesn't actually, Jake. It doesn't care here. It doesn't. The fact that there's a good observation. You thought because there were only 3 here, it didn't. There were 4 things here. It would have matched up. It doesn't. These are independent. It's only looking. The key here is it's only looking at the comma. So what in fact happened?
It thought you wanted 4 different cells to be filled in, not 3, because of the comma you put after Dave, so it shifted everything over 1.
As everybody should now realize after doing program, the computer does what you say, not what you mean. To me and everybody else here, Dave III is a particularly reasonable name. But the convention is, whenever it sees a comma, it doesn't give a flying jump in the lake about what type of comma. It says he's ended the field and he's starting another one. So in fact, when it parsed, when it tried to figure out Dave, comma, III, comma, 97, comma, A, it said, oh, he's got 3 commas there. He means 4 fields. Dave, III, 97, and the letter A. Crap. Now, you're going to say, well, how often is that going to occur? Well, the problem in the computer industry is, and if you deal with this, is that you have to allow for all the cockamamie cases that could happen. So does this beautifully elegant method of having a CSV go away because, in fact, there could be data that has commas in it? Now, I could have, suppose we had company data, right? And in company data, we had ABC Chemical. Well, that would be fine. But suppose we had ABC, comma, chemical, comma, Inc., where the Inc. is part of the name, and they want the comma. Obviously, the comma is going to cause a problem if I'm putting that in a CSV file. So is this elegant way of storing data screwed up because some nincompoop has to use a comma in their name? And the answer is no. The computer industry has a couple of ways of getting around that. One way of getting around that is that if, in fact, I have data that I want it to be, even though I have a CSV file, but I have something in there that's going to throw off the CSV file, what I can do is I can put that piece of data in quotes, double quotes. And the double quote says, look, just anything between the double quotes, don't look for commas in it, just treat it as is. So if, in fact, let me close this. I'm going to go back to my data and let me put around Dave III quotation marks so that now it's Dave III between quotes and save this away. And now go into open up Grave CSV. You'll notice now that the double quotes superseded the comma, and now the CSV convention is anything in double quotes, just treat everything within the double quotes as whole. Don't worry about commas in it. And in this case, that worked. Okay, so everybody get it? You probably would have come up with that. You say, okay, fine, we're going to have something that's going to override the comma. But there's a second solution which I think is even better. So in having this data here, now that we've screwed around with this stuff, we realize that we need to have a character. We need to have a character that is a delimiter. The delimiter being the thing that separates one field from the other. And when we first did this, or when the industry first did this, the natural thing was comma, because we as human beings use comma as delimiters. But now we see that the comma could cause a problem because sometimes the comma, we need the comma in the data. But what's so sacred about the comma as a delimiter? We only used it originally because it was a character that we as human beings use to separate things. But do I care that it's would the computer care that it's a comma? Could the computer say, give me anything that's a delimiter? So in fact, when we create a file, again, we have this data, this external data, and we're trying to read it in, we can in fact not use the comma as the delimiter, but in fact use another character, which is rarely used. The problem with the comma is it's used in sort of normal text. But can we come up with another character that in fact is used as a delimiter? And the answer is we can use any comma character we want to indicate it's the delimiter. Now the character lots of people in the industry adopt as the delimiter, including yours truly, is the caret or the hat, the shift 6. Because it's not used a lot. It's used a little in math to indicate an exponential. And so if, in fact, we were to go through, I'm going to go into Notepad, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to replace now. I'm going to take out my quotes, and now I'm going to replace. I'm going to go to Edit. I'm going to go to Replace. I'm going to say I want to replace every comma with a hat. So that does it en masse. I have to put back the comma between for Dave the third because that's actually data. So now what I have is I've changed my mind now, and that instead of having the comma separate be the field separator, I'm using the hat. So does this make a lot of sense to you? So that makes sense now because the comma seemingly was a good idea, except we noted that it had this one sort of nuisance problem because it's being used. Now, if I want to use this and save it away, the thing that I have to do is I can't save it away as a CSV because, in fact, if Excel and any other program sees the letter CSV, it thinks that it is actually a comma separating it and not the hat character. So what I have to do now is if I'm saving this data away, not using a comma as a separator, I have to save it away, but I can't save it away as a CSV. In fact, I have to give it a different extension. And the extension, I'm going to call this grade hat, and I'm going to save it away as a text file, a .txt file, which is just plain ordinary text. So I've created a file called grade hat that's saved away as a .text file. It's not a CSV file. Grade hat, and I could have called it any file name, and I gave it a .text extension. If I now go into Excel, and now I want to open ctemp grade hat.txt. So I'm now typing that in, and now when I type in grade hat.txt, you'll notice now that the data is not automatically read in because, in fact, I could have chose any character as being the delimiter character. Excel has no idea which one I chose. So it's going to now give me a series of dialog boxes through this text import wizard, which is going to ask me, the first thing it's going to ask me is the way you're reading this in, is there a character delimited or is something fixed with? I'll do that in a minute, fixed with. This particular case, it is delimited, so I'm going to simply take that radio set. I'm going to click on Next. And then the next screen says, okay, buddy, what was the character that delimited each field? Where it displays a bunch of checkboxes for common ones, because I could have used a semicolon, could have used a comma, could have used a space. In this particular case, I used a hat, so I have to click on Other and type in the hat character into the other field. You'll notice that when I did that at the bottom, I didn't mean the hat here. Oh, shut up. Okay, fine. I made it. Okay, so let me do this now again. So I've saved this now. Unfortunately, I had left the hat in after Dave. I meant it to be Dave, comma, because that's my name. So now I've saved. I'm going to save this. And now let me go into Excel and go through this exercise again. I'm going to read in. I'm going to open up ctemp grade hat.txt, and now I'm going to say it's delimited, and note here that when I click on Other and put in hat, that in fact has parsed out and left Dave the third in there in the first column. It's sort of giving you a preview here. At this point, I'm just going to click Finish, and you'll notice now that it in fact has read the data in, ignoring the comma because the comma isn't a separator here. So the Dave, comma the third, that comma is a piece of data just like anything else, and it's fat and happy. So we saw that I can create a CSV file using the comma, but if in fact the comma could be a piece of data, another way to attack this problem is to replace the comma with some other character, let's say a hat, save it away as a TXT file, and then you have to go through this wizard to actually tell it that in fact it was the hat character was the delimited character. So that's the second way. Okay, this isn't really hard. Now, a third way that you can address this issue is you can have your data formatted so that they all line up. So let's suppose that I have name and I have numeric grade, I have an alpha grade. And notice that I'm spacing things out. And what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to line up everything so that it is aligned, so that I have some number of characters and everything is lined up so that now in the first, I don't know however many characters here, maybe 10 characters are the names, the next 6 characters are the numeric, and the next 6 characters are the grade. If I now save this away, I'm going to save this away. I'll call this grade align.txt. Note here that when I save this, I have no delimiting character. I simply have lined them all up. If I now go and try to read this in, and this is C temp grade align. Again, I get this text wizard that I got before when I had the hat. But notice that this radio set has 2 choices, delimited or fixed width. It actually looked at my data and decided, boy, this looks like it's fixed width. It looks like everything's lined up nicely. All the names are lined up, all the numbers are lined up, all the grades are lined up. And so it said, oh, is this fixed width? I could have said it's delimited, but in fact it is fixed width. And when I go to the next screen, now I have to do a little more work, because now it says, okay, buddy, you've given me this alignment. How do I know where to start? How do I know that the number starts in what column? It could look at the first row, but it doesn't. It actually took a guess at where the stuff was, and those vertical rows says, oh, this first field starts over here and goes up to this line. The next field starts at the space after the line and goes up to after the R, and then everything after that's grade. If that, in fact, is the wrong alignment, I can simply click and move the line. So I can move the line to, in fact, to indicate that from here over to this character before the line is the first field. From after the first line to the second line is the second field. And so I can use these lines to actually indicate where the fields start. I can add new ones in by simply double clicking. So if I single click, it'll bring a line in. And if I don't want that, I can simply highlight it and click on delete. Or double click on it and it goes away. So if in fact the information is all lined up, I can save it away again as a .txt, bring it in, say it's a let me go back, it's a fixed width, the data is fixed width, and now I simply put in where these things start by moving this and end. It's probably better this way. And now when I click on finish, note the data comes in nicely. So these text files, whether they're CSV files or .txt with other separator characters or fixed width, is a way of getting data into Excel when it's not actually typed in. Now, a couple of other ideas. In fact, Excel is actually integrated with Access. So if you, in fact, had an Access table and you wanted to get it in, if you clicked on data and you said get external data, you can actually go to an Access table and read in either an Access table or query and bring it into Excel. All you do is you navigate to, here's a database. It brings up all the different tables or queries. I simply click on the one I want, and it brings it in. So in fact, you would assume that since they're the same company, Microsoft has integrated into Excel an easy path into getting data in from Access. And that's quite nice. Okay, one jargon word and one other thing that's cool. I think it's a way to end the class. So let me give you one other jargon word. So it turns out that what I just showed you is a standard way of getting data in We won't be doing this because I don't have it, but because because companies want to be able to exchange data easily, they first adopted this idea of having CSV files, and that works fine, and you guys, everybody here should know about this because a lot of that goes on. For more popular programs, though, there does exist a standard interface between programs. So if I'm Excel and I wanted to get data from, let's say, SAP, which is a very, very popular program. Now, SAP actually runs on a database, right? So SAP is a bunch of code that runs and does business processing and stores information away in a database. So it uses this database management system to store information away. SAP typically uses a product for storing data away called Oracle. And Oracle is a database management system that stores information away. There are other database management systems out there. Access is one. It's not really used by big companies. Another one is another product by Microsoft called SQL Server. So that's another database management system. And it turns out that any database management system built provides a standard way of getting information out of it. And the letters, just so you've heard this term when you speak to the next computer person. So the standard for getting information out of a database and into something else are the letters ODBC. Anybody ever seen that letters? All that means is I'm over here, I'm Excel. And over here is Oracle or Access or even SQL Server. Somebody has written a program called ODBC. It's just a general term that says, I'm going to let you get information out of my database using this ODBC interface. And what it effectively says is it's going to let me look at the tables just like I did here. And it's going to let me suck data out. And it might be, in the case of Access and Excel, well, those are built by the same companies. If Oracle has nothing to do with Microsoft, but they want to let Microsoft be able to get information out of their database, so they built this bridge or this interface called ODBC to allow Excel or Access or any other Microsoft product to be able to extract information out. And that's another way that you're able to get into Excel, in this particular case, information from some other system. That's very nice because typically if your company has ODBC, it's very easy to use to get information out. All you need to know is where that information is housed in that other database. So the last thing I want to show you is the following. So we have things in files. We have this sort of other more elaborate way of getting information out, ODBC. But what about, okay, how many people here are in accounting? Okay, we've got a bunch of accounting people here. Okay, so suppose you're given an assignment and you need to go and get financial statements for publicly traded companies. Where would I go and get that information? I would go to the SEC. And what system would I use at the SEC? Edgar? Is there something? I always use Edgar. So Edgar is a system, okay, the SEC, the Securities and Exchange Commission, is a U.S. government agency. I believe even the most staunchest conservative would say this is an agency that needs to exist. And it oversees publicly traded companies. And one of the things that publicly traded companies need to do every quarter is file financial statements. So if this is a publicly traded company, meaning you can go on a stock exchange and buy it, then you can get information about that publicly traded company. They are required by law, by being a publicly traded company. Hopefully I'm telling you something you already know. I'm refreshing your memory. As a publicly traded company, they are required by law. Every quarter, they have to file their financial statements, income statement, balance sheet. They also have to file any material events that happens. Their president of their company dies. They have to notify everybody via the Securities and Exchange Commission. They have to also file year-end reports. And so these are publicly available. So if I type in Microsoft, and what would be the financial statements for the last quarter? What's the name of that statement? I thought it'd be the 10Q. So here's Microsoft's quarterly statement, and here's their income statement. It's a for the period ending December 31st, right? And I can go there and I can see that their revenues, in fact, this is in millions of dollars, so Microsoft revenues for the quarter was $23 billion. Right? Okay, great. So suppose you're given an assignment and someone says, well, you know what I want? I want you to go out and get a whole bunch of companies and I want you to get their financial statements because I want you to compute financial ratios, right? Remember that stuff? Asset ratio. People are smiling here. They know they did it. You can't lie to me. Okay. So what you had to do is you had to go out here and perhaps you had to go and look at the numbers. I suppose you had to do it for a whole bunch of companies. You say, boy, that's a pain in the neck. You've got to bring it into Excel. You do the calculation. Well, it turns out that built into Excel, if I click on data and I click on get external data, you'll notice here that before I went to access, it says from the web. If I click on from web, in fact, what it brings up is, looks like to be a browser. You can forget about the script error. And here it goes to my home page, which is the CNOL home page. And over here I can type in a URL. If I, in fact, type in the URL, I just pasted the URL for that Microsoft quarterly statement and click on Go, within Excel, that URL, that financial statement will now be brought in. Now, this is a window that's running within Excel. You'll notice that on this page there are these yellow arrows, and if I highlight it, it actually shows text. And what it is, it indicates different areas of this web page that I can actually, that if I click on it, I'm going to click on this, and this is the income statement. What it's actually going to do is if I click on that, highlight it, now that checkbox is now green, and click on import, what in fact Excel is going to do is it's going to go out to that page, it's going to get that data, and it's going to read it in, putting it into columns nicely. So it went out to that web page which had this information and in fact brought it into the spreadsheet. So in fact, and this is not guaranteed that you can do this on every web page because the web page have to be defined in a particular way, but lots of them have it this way so that in fact within your spreadsheet you can actually go out to a website, read the information and have it brought in a nicely formatted way. It's pretty cool. You are able to sometimes, you actually do cut and paste sometimes, you get away with it. It's a baseball season, so there's a terrific website here. Anybody ever gone to this one? Baseballreference.com. It's got every statistic on everything that has ever happened in baseball ever. Okay, so if you wanted to get information about some player, okay, my favorite player of all time, Tony Gwynn. Maybe the greatest hitter of all, not the greatest hitter of all time, but he doesn't get enough credit. So in fact, you have here is all his statistics. I know some people might not know anything about baseball, but you might want to bring this in. You actually probably could do a cut and paste. So if I'm doing a copy here and go into a sheet and bring it in, it actually does a reasonable job of bringing it in. So you can actually do a copy and paste. And suppose you wanted to have into Excel a page for every player. Would you actually be able to somehow be able to automate that, maybe via macro to go and do that? The answer is yes. That's your assignment for Monday. Just kidding. But it would be sort of interesting, and people actually do that. So here's another way of getting external data into Excel, and now I can do all the fun things I want to do in Excel. Okay, so I do not have a homework assignment for you for Monday. Right, exactly. This guy's an imposter. Call up security. There's not this in my... So I will see you on Monday.